Welcome to the Beyond Barriers podcast. If you're an ambitious woman who wants to advance in leadership, then this podcast is for you. This podcast is co-hosted by Nikki Barua, digital innovator, serial entrepreneur, author, and speaker, and Monica Marquez, senior corporate leader, ex-Googler, and diversity expert. From inspiring stories to cutting-edge strategies, you'll learn how to develop the skill set, mindset, and tool set to get future-ready fast and accelerate your success. Hi, I'm Monica, your host for today's episode. Lexi B didn't grow up dreaming about working in the world of tech. In fact, she assumed anyone in the tech industry was skilled in coding, so a career in the tech world was just simply out of reach. So imagine her surprise to now find herself as the chief of staff for key leaders at Twitter. However, it's really no surprise that Lexi forged her way into a leadership role in the tech world. From an early age, Lexi has been a connector. Even as a freshman in her Stanford dorm, she realized that while her peers may not have important connections as 18-year-olds, their parents and relatives did. It was that moment that Lexi discovered the power of community and her first networks were formed, sparking her non-traditional path into the tech world. Lexi's a vibrant leader who believes in promoting others' good work and providing them the tools to do their jobs well. Join us as we hear all about Lexi's path and what earned her a leadership position at Twitter. Visit IamBeyondBarriers.com, where you'll find show notes and links to all the resources in this episode, including the best way to get in touch with Lexi. Welcome, Lexi B. Thank you so much for joining us on the Beyond Barriers podcast. We are thrilled to have you here. And I don't want to waste any time. I want to dive into it because one, I love your energy and I know that you have stories and pearls of wisdom to share with our audience. So let's dive right in and talk a little bit about who is Lexi B, what was your journey, and how did you end up where you are at Twitter in a chief of staff role? And what does all that mean? And did you even know what chief of staff was? And were you aiming for that when you first started out? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. First and foremost, I'm so honored to be here with you. I think that you are such a phenomenal woman and human and can teach us so much. So thank you for being a shero of mine and for building this underground railroad for people like me. So because of you, I am in my career. And I do want to say that and highlight that on your platform. Who is Lexi B? That's a very intense question. I am a dark-skinned Black girl with curly hair from St. Louis, Missouri, which is very, very important, even though I live in California with Southern American roots. So I am a descendant of the enslavement of African bodies. And recently, when I do speaking engagements or intro myself, it's a very important part of myself because I do believe that many times we as Black people, we're all lumped in together. And I always tell folks that diaspora is beautiful and there are many, many threads that are very common among us and we are also different. And I think it's important for people to understand my angle of difference, which really does come from the descendants of West African enslaved people, unlike other people that come from different parts of the world. I currently work in the tech industry and social media. I've worked at some of the most prominent names in tech, including NetApp, Facebook, Airbnb, and now Twitter. And no, if you had asked me at 6 years old, what am I going to be when I grow up? This was nothing to do with it. I didn't know that tech existed until I went to college at Stanford. So very much that kid who went to college, had a wonderful time. And that's when I was introduced to this crazy world known as the technology industry. Where I'm from, it's beer, baseball, and Boeing. So I really didn't have an understanding that this is real. I remember biking down University Avenue in September 2007 as a freshman at Stanford and seeing the Facebook headquarters and calling my parents and being like, yo, they have a headquarters. And I remember my parents were like, well, we would assume they're a business, right? But just that emotion. I remember biking and seeing that emotion and saying, oh, wow, so I could work at these places. And that's how I got started. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. And I love what you said in terms of that limited frame of reference, right? That we grow up with. And, our definition of success can be very different depending on where you grew up, who you were surrounded by, and the definition of success that was somewhat
handed down to you of this is what it meant. And so as you shared a little bit as you were biking, you were at Stanford and you see the headquarters. What did that do for you in terms of opening up that kind of like aha moment? Like, whoa, there's lots of more stuff out there than, becoming a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, whatever it was that definition. So what did your definition look like before the bike ride and then after the bike ride?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, my definition of success was to be financially successful, be able to take care of myself, to not be a doctor because my dad's a doctor. And I think that kids rebel against their parents, to not be a teacher because my mother is a teacher. So my definition of success was be financially okay, but not be those things. And I want to highlight that because I think that we talk about all the time about representation, and I am a product of an upper middle class family, checking my own privilege. I'm also a product of people living in the Midwest. And so these companies weren't in the Midwest. So I don't know what I don't know. So coming from this very privileged background and literally relocating to see the Facebook sign and having that moment, it wasn't necessarily about poverty for me and things like that. It was that sign is not in St. Louis, right? Again, beer, baseball, and Boeing. So my definition of success was to work for a company that sounded really, really cute on paper at the time when I was 18. That was not in medicine and was not in education and was not beer and was not baseball. So I had I was keenly aware at 18 that there was this like crazy world out there. And also at the same time, keenly aware that I had no idea what it was, but I knew something was there. Right. And that's fantastic. And I love your candor in terms of, it's almost sometimes easier to know what you don't want. Exactly. In order for you to find kind of what you do want. And I think too, that hunger and that curiosity of what is out there. I know that these things have to matter in terms of financial stability and, doing something that you love. So you decide, okay, I'm going to be open, look at all of these different opportunities. But given that your expertise is in kind of branding and all of these different types of things, you had to create a personal brand for yourself. Yes. Talk a little bit about that in terms of, being able to build that in order to attract the opportunities that you were looking for. Yeah. So fun fact, when I went to school, even seeing that Facebook sign, I was very weary about getting into tech. So everybody, the school that I went to was getting into tech. There was always, what are you doing this summer? And it was going to some startup. And of course, me being a rebel, I went to the career counseling center. And I said, so I need to do something this summer. And they said, what do you want to do? And I said, anything but tech. And they laughed at me. And I did this, I think, for a few reasons. I am the person that usually when people go right, I go left. There is a stubbornness streak about me, but also I think there was fear. I really didn't know what tech was. I knew that I played with it. I knew that I had a Facebook with friends and, I knew that we talked about it in some capacity in classes, but I just didn't want to go there. So I told the Career Center, I want to do something and I think the quote was in a sexy consumer brand. And they're like, what is that? And I said, let's think of I want to build the Super Bowl commercial, or I want to produce a fashion show. And so I was this very creative kid on campus who was like, I want to do these businessy things, but I want to do it in these very cool, creative spaces. I did not understand what career branding was at until I did an internship with Ralph Lauren the summer of 2010 before my senior year. And it was the most grueling, intense internship that taught me the majority of the foundation of my career. To be in a fashion house all the way from California, someone who's never really spent a lot of time in New York. I did some stints here and there as a child for extracurriculars, but not to the extent of living in New York and those kinds of things. And for folks who've never been to New York is a very daunting city. Yes. And then to work in the fashion industry, which I think is a mystery of its own. And so while I worked there and worked multiple hours a day as this intern in the public relations department, basically owning the closet So every fashion house, they have this closet of all of their clothes, and we would rent out the clothes for free to fashion shoots. So I was the intern that had to know what was in the closet and what was out of the closet at any given time. Because we were talking about like $50,000, $60,000 pieces of clothing. So that was my 21-year-old job, which is really intense. And I think that if you want to learn about branding, do an internship in fashion. So that's where I learned about career branding. I would have to take these clothes and take them to photo shoots, sometimes have bodyguards with me because they were that expensive. And I got to watch these very creative brand masters make the brand in real time. I distinctly remember taking a Ralph Lauren collection dress to a photo shoot for the September issue. And to watch these people in this room create this whole picture that before I was there was just a beautiful shot on a magazine. And after I left, it was like, oh, that's what a career brand is. To watch these very famous fashion photographers with Halle Berry in the room and watch these makeup artists and then watching them all come together just to tell this one story with this one dress. And that was my first time that I realized, okay, so that's how I brand my career. If we're going to spend 12 hours doing a shot of one dress on Halle Berry for the fall September 2011 issue or 2010 issue, and it was a 12-hour shoot, what does that mean for my career? And as I spent the summer doing this for multiple shots and spreads for Ralph Lauren, for all these different magazines, what I realized was that I needed to treat my career like how these people in this room treat this magazine.
I love what you just said.
And that's basically what happened. And so at the time, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know like the specific steps I needed to take. But when you spend 4 months for 12 hours a day on photo shoots, talking to other interns at the fashion houses, having conversations at 10 p.m. at night where it's like, no, Lexi, you need to come back in and pick up this one bracelet because Grace Coddington at Vogue said, we cannot do this shoot without this one bracelet, right? It really taught me the art of what does it look like for me to take control of my career and be able to be in a position to make decisions about my one bracelet. And I remember I left New York thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up, but I want to be in a position with my career that I can sit in a room for 12 hours and decide exactly what it's going to look like. And I want the freedom and the power to do so. And that was my first understanding of career branding.
I love that. I don't think I've heard a better story and analogy as to how intentional you have to be in managing your career. Because over the course of the years in, mentoring and coaching young women and people of color and just other individuals that would come to me, and understanding that we have to get rid of this myth that we believe, put your head down, work really hard, and your work will speak for itself. It'll take you only so far.
It won't.
Yes, it won't. It's just like, that's just the little pretty dress. You've got to learn how to build the story around it. Yeah. I absolutely love that. Now, you mentioned a little bit about when you said, I want to do anything but tech. And you said it was because you don't know what you don't know, but there are also some fears or uncertainty, right? So can you talk a little bit about kind of like the fears, limiting beliefs, because you're now in tech. So was there a point when you were transitioning to the tech world where you had some limiting beliefs or some fears that, what am I getting myself into, and how come those? Yeah.
So in college, I really didn't understand how business worked. I knew there were people who made the product. Right. So for tech, for example, the engineers who build the stuff. And, when you're in college, we have a whole department for that. I always tell folks, I think one of the issues that we need to change in our institutions, especially for students who don't have visibility into all of these roles wherever they may be, is how in which we define what a major is. So as a college kid, I was like, okay, so if I do X major, I will probably have this type of degree, right? Or like this type of career. If I major in biology, that means I want to be a biology teacher / professor, or I want to be a doctor. And so I had a very linear understanding of that. When I went to Stanford, I went to school with some amazing people and also people with crazy resources. And so going to lunch, going to dinner, hanging out after a party and starting to talk to people, I was like, oh, your dad does what? Oh, so I didn't know these jobs existed. And I was not a computer science major. So I think one of the reasons why I was fearful of tech was because I never studied it. Right? No one at school was like, oh, you can be a psychology major and do X in tech. I didn't know that. They were like, you want to work in tech? Be a computer science kid. And I was like, there's no way that I am coding. Like, that's going to be a hard no for all of us.
Yes.
What happened is that I came back to school from Ralph Lauren and I started thinking about what I wanted to do as my first job. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I got a lot of pressure from one side of people saying, you need to go get another degree, because people of color, we got 18 and a half degrees.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Which, by the way, I fully support. I think education is phenomenal. I still love learning. I also think that especially BIPOC people, women of color, Black and brown women to be specific, I always tell folks, why are you getting the degree? Because I also think we have a debt called reparations, which we don't have. And so you staying in school an infinite amount of time instead of working smarter, not harder, concerns me. And I was tired of school. So I was like, let me just get a job for 2 years and figure it out. And again, your network, there was a wonderful Black woman who was considered my mentee at Stanford because she was younger than me. And she was a computer science major. And she saw me senior year in our quad, kind of the area where people are biking to get to class. And she said, I haven't seen you in a while. So what are you doing after college? And it was the worst question ever. I started crying in the middle of the quad, which of course he wasn't prepared for. I was like, I don't know. And I'm a failure. And my parents come in 3 months to see me graduate. What's going to happen? And she kind of stopped me out of it and said, hey, I interned at this company and they're looking for someone to be a new college grad. And I can't because I have to come back to school. Do you want to be connected? And I said, but I'm not a computer science major like you. And she was like, it doesn't matter. And that was the first person who gave me the okay to be like, it's cool that I can't code. No one had told me that until that moment. And so we connected, she connected me with her manager from her internship. The manager hit me up. I went to the interview, not knowing what a program manager was, not knowing anything about engineering. I knew nothing. And I probably said that in the interview during spring break. And there was a Black man in the interview who was a director. He was the manager of the hiring manager. And I will never forget, he closed the door for the interview and he looked at me and he was like, okay, so this is what's going to happen. You're going to stop telling people you don't know. You're going to talk about how you communicate well. You're going to talk about how you're organized and how you're willing to learn. And then we're going to get you this job and you're going to start working and you're going to learn. And I was like, okay. I got the job and I started working at NetApp in July 2011. And so for 4.5 years, I had to learn how to be a program manager. And guess what? That man, Kirk Law, who's phenomenal and a senior VP in the tech industry, very well known, he was right. I didn't know what I was doing. And I think his point was that like, no one knows what they're actually doing. But are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to talk to people? Are you willing to ask the hard questions? And so very quickly, he really mentored me and helped me into the fold. He was the person in my first few weeks of work where he would do things where he was like, you need to go talk to this person and you need to walk down the hall and take 3.5 steps and then pass the tree and then pass the evil witch in the hut and then make it right. And you're going to go to that person and here's the script that you're going to say. And I was like, okay. And he really built this, he helped me build this community with the NetApp to teach me not only how to do my job, but how to adult. And the reason why he did it was that I can't speak for him, but part of me always thinks that he knew nobody was going to do that for this little new college grad Black girl. They would do it for everybody else, but they wouldn't do it for me. In my new college grad class, I was one of 2 Black kids, and one of them was a man and he was an engineer. right? And so here I am. I think I was one of 5 non-engineers out of a new college grad class of like 200. So we were already isolated. We didn't know what was going on. And then there was little me. And so you had Kirk, who was like, look, I need you to figure this out. I'm going to help you figure out some parts. There's some parts I don't know. And we're going to go down this hallway, and I have someone who's going to figure it out. And that's when I really started learning about the power of community and people really being in your corner to say, I see something in you, and I'm going to help you find the tools to learn how to use them to build something that is for you.
Wow, that is a beautiful story. And I have to say, Kirk is the epitome of what an ally, what a sponsor of, he's earned that title, right? And I think the other important thing that you said that I want to reinforce, and I want you to talk about it a little bit, is that Kirk may have been brown like you, a Black man, but he was a man.
Yes.
And many times we tend to have an affinity, or for whatever reason, feel like we have to find another Black woman, another Latina, someone who looks like me to show me the way. Yeah. And like you, most of my sponsors, most of the people who opened the doors and gave me opportunities were men that did not look like me, think like me, but they saw the potential, like you said, and they took me under their wing. Let's talk a little bit about that, where sometimes people have an aversion to identifying someone who doesn't look like them to help lead the way, navigate. What would you say about that? What would you say are like some of the most valuable lessons you learn about, not, being open to allowing someone like that to help you?
I mean, I think point blank period, if someone's going to help you, take the help. Why would you not? The world is crazy as it is. I always joke with my team and I'm like, y'all, Earth is ghetto, right? Like ET, come pick me up and send me to Wakanda. And so until that happens, I'm never going to not accept help, or at least hear someone out. I've been very blessed in my career to have mentors and sponsors and helpers really pour into me who look all the way different. And I always tell people it's very important to understand that just because someone doesn't look like you or identify with you, whatever identity layer that is, does not mean they can't pour into you in some capacity. And the worst thing that can happen after that conversation is it is a waste of your time. You know how much time is wasted in your life? The best thing that can happen is that it's like, oh, let me call you back. The middle thing that can happen is they can't help me, but they said they would connect me to someone who would. And I'm very, very big on networking. I actually learned that at Stanford. I learned at Stanford pretty quickly that, being 18 and being a freshman, I'm in a dorm room with people that are also 18 and freshmen. So we're all kind of dumb together. So you can't help me, right? Like we're just trying to figure this out together. You can't help me, but you know who can help me? Your aunt, who is, the head of marketing for Coco Chanel. You know who can help me? Your mom, who literally is Mrs. Fields of Mrs. Fields Cookies. You know what I mean? So and I learned that very quickly at Stanford was that, hey, us all 18-year-olds sitting in class trying to navigate college and what are we going to do this summer is actually a very depressing conversation, because it's like the blind leading the blind. But if we start having conversations like, hey, what does your uncle do? And they're like, yeah, Uncle so-and-so. Oh, he does XYZ. Like he's the CFO of Nissan. You're like, wait, so like we could crunch numbers for cars. And those were the transformative conversations. So I learned that very early on in college. And so when I went to start my career, that's the one thing that I knew was that if anybody was going to give me a coffee or a lunch or a happy hour pre-COVID or 15 minutes of their time, or say, hey, walk with me to the meeting and we can chat in the hallway, I always took it because I knew that I didn't know anything. And I was like, the worst case happens is that you say things and I just sit there and nod respectfully, or like passive aggressively respectful. And then I just don't take anything out of it. And in my 4.5 years of NetApp, there is not one coffee or lunch or happy hour or long walk to and from the conference room that I did not benefit from, even if it was as simple as this person is not for me and I need to watch my back.
I think that is phenomenal. I want to get this part of the podcast and make people listen and repeat about the intentionality, because proximity is everything.
Yes.
But you don't understand who you're proximate to unless you have those conversations, like you said. And the other key thing is that you weren't afraid to ask.
No.
Talk a little bit about that, because that's sometimes that, some of the women who go through our Beyond Barriers program, they get hung up on the ask, or I feel bad like that I'm using these people, or I'm being intentional of building a relationship for them because I want to leverage their knowledge or something for my benefit at work. What do you have to say to that? Because I love your mindset in terms of get to know people. Networking is powerful and you will learn something from it. What do you have to say about those who kind of shy away because they don't want to be a burden on somebody else?
Two things: closed mouths don't get fed. And two, the person that you think are a burden on, they are either A, currently a burden or someone else, or B, have been a burden before. And I had to learn that in my first few years as an adult. I was very skeptical about asking. It was people like Kirk Law and other people at NetApp, leaders who helped me and friended me, who would ask for me. Sometimes I'd be too afraid. I had this one person, his name is Mark, and he worked at NetApp, and he was happened to be a white man who worked down the hall, and he went to Stanford, and he had a huge Stanford poster on his wall. And so one day I passed it and I was like, I went to Stanford too. And he was like, let's be friends. And this man would have weekly lunches with me, and I could walk over all of my programs and ask questions. The one thing that he taught me, and he always say, if you forget everything I've taught you, remember this. Said what? He said, every time that you get invited into a meeting with powerful people, go and watch the meeting. And what he meant was he was like, go sit in the back and watch the room. Don't even listen to the content. Watch the room. Because that's when you find out who's actually the most powerful person in the room. That's when you find out who has influence in someone else. And then he would also say, and listen, and he would also always tell me, Lexi, as you learn how to do your job, you need to actually emulate behavior. And he said, so if you see someone in a room one day and you like how in which they said something, you liked how in which they changed the conversation, or how they said no, or how they responded when then they were 5 minutes late. He said, take that and then go and play with it. And I did that very early on in my career, was that just watching people. And so when the meeting would end, I would go up to them and I would say, hey, I would love to ask you some questions about that thing, why you said no to that. And people always love talking about themselves, I realized. And so they were always willing to talk to me, even for 5 minutes. I've actually never met someone who said no to having coffee with me to my face.
Yes.
I know a whole lot of people who somehow not see my email, but I can deal with that. I can deal with being ghosted via email. I've never had someone in my career when I said, hey, I would love to talk to you about what just happened because I have some questions. I've never had someone be like, no.
What if you could pinpoint the invisible ceilings limiting your success? Imagine having clarity on your strengths and barriers so you can take action and gain unstoppable momentum to advance as a future-ready leader. Well, that's exactly what the Beyond Barriers quiz will help you discover. You'll get your personalized score based on the 25 essential elements proven to accelerate success in the digital age, so you can understand what's holding you back and where to focus your efforts. The Beyond Barriers quiz is completely free and takes just a few minutes. Go to iambeyondbarriers.com/quiz and take the quiz today.
I love these nuggets that you're dropping. So you mentioned Mark told you, observe those people, right? So you identify the people who are successful or have the successes that you want, and then go and ask them about that specific thing. Like, how did you do this, or why did you do this in that manner, and emulate that? And I think that's so important. But I love his words where he said, play with it, right? Because there's a fine line between assimilating and acculturating, right? Because we want to remain our authentic selves. I get pushback all the time when I tell people, what is the definition of success? Learn what those behaviors and those things are, and then you have to emulate them. And people are like, yeah, but I don't want to sell out. I don't want to, But talking to you right now, I can tell you've assimilated really well and you're super successful, but you've acculturated, but you didn't completely you're still authentic. You still are who you are. And so making sure that people don't completely assimilate and lose who they are, but they more acculturate, right? And be able to do that. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think people sometimes get worried about, if I do this, I kind of am selling my soul, in order to be successful.
Yeah, no, I never want to sell my soul. And there are many times where I'm actually having conversations with my husband or my family where I'm actually checking myself in that. Because I always tell people I want to be a leader that at the end of the day, the Black community knows I think Black first. And that's true. Any room that I'm in, I am thinking Black women first, whether you like it or not. I'm thinking about how the decisions that we're making, how they affect Black women for good and for bad. I'm thinking about how I can get more Black women into these rooms. I'm thinking about 22-year-old Lexi, who did not have a Black woman mentor. Yes. And as much as I want to preach the idea that mentors and help can come in all different shapes and sizes, there is something about having someone that actually identifies as you as a mentor and a sponsor, because of so many things that are unsaid, because of so much safety. So when you walk in the room, because as we all know, your career is not just your career, it is personal. And so to be able for you, for example, to go to a Latina woman and be like, look, so I have 2 job offers. This one is great. This one's less money, but this one gives me more free time. And I'm thinking about using that free time for A, B, and C, to be able to have that real life conversation with this other Latina woman in power is very important. Yes. And so I do want to just put that out there. But for me, it's really about how do I do my job and how do I do it well? And back to Mark, I still emulate people. All the time. I will go to meetings and I will listen to what you say and how you say it. And then I will watch how somebody responds to it. Because for me, I am an empathetic and emotional leader. And I'm actually proud about that, because I really believe that if I can empower you to do your job and you feel phenomenal, you're going to do even a better job. Yes. So it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And the things that I have to do, I have to say no a lot of times. I have to put up boundaries a lot of times as a dark-skinned Black woman with curly hair that everybody knows I love being Black. Yes. I come off as aggressive when I say no because of the politics and the history behind that, right? To have a dark-skinned Black woman tell a white man in leadership no. There's a lot of layers there. And so I had to learn, okay, I like how you said no, and how do I play with it? And for the majority of my career is always an audition and it's always a play. And I'm always saying things and then turning off my computer and saying, I didn't like the ending. Let me try that again. But it's also collecting leaders that I like. Whenever I go to a new company, I'm always looking for that leader that it's not in, again, I'm not in finance. It could be the CFO. For me, it's not necessarily what you do, but it's how you do it. At a certain point in your career, you going higher in your career has nothing to do with the content. It has to do with how in which you do it. I remember at Airbnb, there was a woman who I loved copying. And I loved copying her, not because she was brilliant, but also because everybody else thought she was brilliant. And so as I kind of taking stock of people and some of their mannerisms, right? Also look at their scorecard in the dining hall. And this particular woman, she was the highest ranking woman at Airbnb when I was there, and everybody loved her. And I had this wonderful opportunity to work with her. And I would watch her in rooms. I would watch how, the room would be busy, people walking in. And by the way, it was a majority male room. And as soon as she walked in, everybody would sit up straight. It was hilarious to me. I
love it.
See her walk in, they'd be like, okay, let's get this together. And it wasn't this act of like, she's mean. It was very much this act of like, I respect her so much. I would watch people watch her talk. And I would sit there and say, yo, like this woman could sell water to a whale. And and that really made me, when I was there for 2 years, I would just watch her. And sometimes I'd be like, oh, maybe she thinks that I'm stalking her, but I would love to be in a room with her. And every chance I got, I'd want to be in the room, even if it wasn't about my actual work, because I wanted to take some of that magic. And I literally spent 2 years at Airbnb and watch her listen to this and laugh. And it was like, how can I be more like her in these areas? And guess what? She was a very light-skinned, white passing Cuban woman. We're very different. We're very different. She came from Texas. I come from St. Louis. Very, very different. She was a lawyer.
Yes.
I am not very, very different. But how people reacted to her, how she responded to people, how she was always prepared for a conversation, how she was so willing to say when she didn't know. I had never heard a leader say, I don't know, for my entire life. One time I was in a room with her and someone asked her a very important question and she said, I don't know. And I thought the world was going to end. I was like, I didn't know that I could say, I don't know. And the meeting ended and I stayed and I walked out with her and I said, wait, so you can say, I don't know? And she said, yes, I say it all the time. And I was like, are you sure? Like, aren't you concerned? And she was like, am I concerned that I don't know? And she said, sometimes, but she said, and she told me, Lexi, just because I say I don't know doesn't mean I'm not going to figure it out. And she walked away.
Yes.
Have some woman say that to me in a world of the white patriarchy where, we are kind of ingrained. You always have to know. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned from her. It's okay as a leader just to say, I don't know, but we're going to figure it out. And to see the respect she received. Yeah. Copycat people and figure out how it works for you. Her and I are very different. I haven't talked to her in years and we're clearly very different. Our lifestyles, our identity layers of privilege, of race, of where we come from, of all these things. And still to this day, the fact that was so many years ago. And I'll be the first person to be like working with that woman, alongside that woman, and just being in the room with her has transformed my career and how I act as a woman and as a leader and get things done. Yeah.
That is phenomenal. Thank you so much. There's so many nuggets in there that we can go with. And I think it's powerful that like you say, identifying what it is that they do that helps make them successful. But it's also so empowering, the idea of being able to say, I don't know, but saying it with courage and confidence in that you have the ability and the competency to then go figure it out, right? And I think sometimes people find more power in that because we all have this uncertainty sometimes. And we look for that leader who will say, I don't know, but we'll figure it out together. Kind of really helps others kind of the buy-in opposed to kind of just sitting back, leaning back, or not wanting to do anything at all. I think it is absolutely powerful.
Yeah.
Now, you shared so many things in terms of how do how you became successful. And, you're now in tech, chief of staff. Lots of things come your way. I think not a single day is probably the same for you. So how do you stay ahead of what might happen, even when it's the unknown? What are the habits or daily rituals that help you, navigate, pivot, and get the job done, even when there is that level of uncertainty?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost thing is to be very, very close, build that really close relationship with the person that you are supporting, right? And I support a phenomenal human being who has been so instrumental in my life. And he happens to be an engineer. And as a person who's not an engineer, I know that probably when this relationship started, there could have been a lot of people who were like, so how is this going to work? Because I make it very clear in meetings, I am not an engineer, right? But to work with him and get to know him, to understand what he cares about. Very important when you work. And I'm sure you know as a leader as well, that it's not really about the content or the product. It's what the person that you support cares about.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what you do. You can understand what someone cares about. And so every day, regardless of what I'm doing throughout the day, it all comes back to what does he care about? Because my job, I tell folks, is that if a a bodyguard and a Power Ranger and like a program manager and a strategy leader had a baby, that's how I look at my job. So yes. I focus on what he cares about. And I always tell folks, I focus on the things that are not done. I have no problem walking into a project room or a program room and someone saying, we need someone to help create this Excel document. If this one Excel document is what's stopping you from being great, then I will do when is it due? What color paper do you want it on? Right. And that's how I do my job. And I take it very seriously, is that I'm the person that can come in and I will unblock things for you, whatever you need. And if that is something as like going to talk to the Queen of England, great. Anybody got her WhatsApp? Is that as simple as making the Excel document great? I am humble enough and excited enough to do anything for you, to empower you in this room, whatever job that you do your best work. And then also, I'm the person behind the scenes making sure that your manager knows how phenomenal you are. And I think that we need to highlight that because many times we don't discuss that. We're easy to tell people's management when they're not doing a good job. We forget when they're doing excellent work. And many times I'm working with the people who they are that under the scene folks who never get recognition, but definitely if something goes bad, we call them first. And so the first Friday of every month, I actually put in my calendar. I use that time for the first couple hours of the day as I drink coffee and listen to music and get ready for work. I have a list and I actually write emails to them and their manager because I want people to know that I see their good work. And I want people to know that just because no one saw what you did, I saw it. And I want the person who writes your paycheck to know that because of what you did or are doing, we are actually being successful. And I think that unfortunately comes from a trauma response, because I do think that early in my career, I was the person that I felt like I was doing a lot and nobody was showing it. So I promised myself in my mid-20s, I was like, if I'm ever in a position where I can change that, everybody who works with me will know that I think they're phenomenal. And whatever I have to do, something as simple as chatting your manager and being like, Monique is the bomb, right? All the way to doing a formal performance review. I want people who do phenomenal work to be glorified. And I do think that there is some issues when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And it's usually people who look like me who are not glorified for their work. It is people that look like me who are not paid equally. And when it's time for conversations around promotion, even if they get the promotion, if you weren't paid equally to begin with, you got a promotion, but you're still underpaid. And so whatever I can do to make the playing field equal, regardless of what you look like, who you come from, who you love, and what food your mama made you growing up, I'm going to do that because I have been a target of that behavior and I don't want anybody else to feel that way.
Wow. You are a brilliant and beautiful human being. And you are doing everything that I, try to share with all of our people of we have to level up together. And the only way we can do that is by shining the light on others, but also on yourself, right? And so it's this whole taboo thing around self-promotion, right? It's really hard for us to self-promote and own our accomplishments or share them broadly. But what you're doing is so powerful by self-promoting on behalf of that person, right? You're promoting them opposed to them having to do the work. And I think that is beautiful. That is something that everybody should practice. And it would be such a, it would be such a better place to level up together, and it would accelerate that. There's a compounding, piece to that where, we celebrate our accomplishments and you're kind of shining the light on them. So kudos to you for doing that. Oh my God, I could talk to you forever and ever, but I know that we have a finite amount of time. So I'm going to jump to our lightning round of questions that we like to ask everybody in closing. And I'm sure these are going to be fun with you. Let's talk about what book has greatly influenced you?
Oh my gosh, so many. But the one that I just saw, because I just finished moving, and so I just unpacked it, would be anything from Toni Morrison, I know why the cage bird sings by Maya Angelou, because that really speaks to me as a black woman and how I can help my people. I also want to highlight, there is a book called Shoe Dog. It is by the man who created Nike. And it was the best 72 hours of my life from a corporate standpoint of what it means to create a business and make a business and bring people around that support your vision.
Shoe Dog. I'm gonna have to look into that one. I've heard about it, but I haven't yet cracked it.
Yes.
Awesome. What is your favorite inspiring quote or saying?
My favorite inspiring quote or saying is something that my mom used to tell me and still tells me. And it literally is, "Do you, boo." And it's her beautiful way of reminding me that regardless of what happens in life, I just have to stay who I am, regardless if that irritates people, if people love it. My goal is to stay me. And the second quote's from my dad. And he used to tell me, all you have to do in this world is stay black and die. Everything else is literally a choice. And there's many times when I'm at work or dealing with hard problems where it's like, all I have to do is stay black and die. It reminds me that that's really all that I must do in this planet. Everything else I do is an actual choice that I am making. And so the real question is, what choice do I want to make?
Wow, that is just grounding, and it helps bring you back every time. I love those.
Always.
I love it.
Yes.
So what is one word or moniker you would use to describe yourself?
Candid to a fault.
Candid to a fault. I love it. I love it.
Or my little brother told me this a few days ago. He was like, "You're not a nice person, you're kind." And I was like, I don't even know what twisted compliment that is. And I think what he's trying to say is that I do not think that I'm a nice person. I do not think that I'm the person that has this degree of like superficial niceness. But I am a very, very kind person. I'm an active listener. I want to help you solve solutions. I am a nurturer, but I just don't walk around the world and have this superficial niceness. I think that that's very dangerous and violent. So.
That's powerful, the being kind. But like you said, there's this whole, I would say, juxtaposition about, the need for being liked sometimes. And so sometimes people are nice and disingenuous, and it's just like, so I can appreciate that. And I love that.
Yeah.
So what is one change, a habit, a behavior, or some action that you do that you implemented and it made your life a whole lot better?
I got clarity on what I wanted to be when I grow up. This is a very recent thing. Like in the past 6 months. Okay. So I'm still working on it. I think my whole career, when I look back at it, my whole career, I was doing chief of staffy things. I think my whole career, I was being a chief of staff and not being paid for it and not having the title. And so therefore I was being taken advantage of. And I think in the past 6 to 8 months, I started kind of putting the pieces all together slowly. And I said, oh, this is the job. This is what I do. This is how I do it. This is the title. This is what color it's going to look like on a daily basis. And if you do not like any of those things, that is totally awesome. I don't want it.
I love it. The clarity and that conviction and the confidence. It's amazing. It's amazing how much clarity unleashes your confidence as well. That's phenomenal.
Because when you're clear, what I've realized now in my career is that once you get clear, you can't go back. Right? It's like, it's like going to therapy. Once you start going to therapy and you become this better version of yourself, you can't go back to your old self. And that's the beautiful blessing about clarity, regardless of where it is in your life. And then also sometimes the more painful things, because you have to say no to things.
Yes.
So now y'all, I can't go back. I have this clarity shadow,
That's it. We're just going to move forward. We're moving forward with you.
I'm not going back. I'm not going back. Yeah. No.
All right. Now, my favorite question. So say 1,000 people in the audience, you're about to walk up on stage. What is that power song that would be playing in the background as Lexi B stepped onto that stage?
It would probably be Rhythm Nation by Janet Jackson or by Janelle Monáe.
I love it.
I've used them before. So yes.
Yes, you have. I can't wait. Lexi B, it's been an amazing time talking to you. I could talk forever and ever. And we're going to have to carve out some time and do this again, because I think there's a whole lot more in there that we can pull out of you and share with our audiences. And I can tell you right now that I know for a fact our audience will be reaching out and saying, loved Lexi B's podcast episode. How do I follow her? How do I, get to know her? How do I stalk her the way she stalks people and emulate what she does? How would they get into contact with you?
So my Instagram and my Twitter are at Lexi B Speaks. You can find me on LinkedIn at Lexi B. And then you can also find me on my website at www.lexib.com, because I love to do speaking engagements and talk about these things and talk about how we can build more equitable places of work. So yes, let's do that.
Phenomenal. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been absolutely fantastic. Definitely more to come, and hope we stay together and connected and share more pearls of wisdom in the future. Thanks a lot, Lexi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond Barriers podcast. There are thousands of podcasts out there, and we are so grateful that you've chosen to listen to ours. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and tell a friend about it. And subscribe to get new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Visit IamBeyondBarriers.com, where you'll find show notes, links, and the best way to connect with our guests. See you next episode.